Airports carry their own kind of silence, the kind that's filled with motion but still feels like waiting. Mia Bennett stood beneath the harsh white lights of JFK Terminal C, her body gently swaying to the rhythm of the child pressed against her chest. Luna, 13 months old, slept soundly in the soft embrace of the baby carrier, her breath warm against Mia's collarbone. Mia's hands never left her daughter's back, instinctively protective, even in sleep. The diaper bag slung across her shoulder weighed more than just bottles and blankets. It carried everything Mia hadn't said in over a year. She was leaving. Finally. Her fingers brushed against the folded job offer tucked into the front pocket of her jacket. Lisbon Creatives, a small media agency, had hired her as a junior photo editor. The salary wasn't glamorous, but the distance, an ocean between her and the man who'd vanished, was priceless. She kept moving forward through the crowd, despite the tiredness stitched into every step. One more flight, one more hour, and maybe, finally, a reset. She didn't look around, because looking back meant risking the one thing she couldn't afford anymore, feeling. And then, somewhere across the terminal floor, Ryan Blake looked up from his phone, distracted by a child's soft murmur and the gentle sway of a familiar figure. He froze. For a moment, the noise around him blurred into static. The crowd thinned in his peripheral vision. The announcements faded. All he saw was her, Mia, and the child. A little girl with dark curls and soft brown skin, nestled against Mia's chest like she'd always belonged there. His heart thudded. Too familiar, too exact. He didn't know the child's name, but he recognized the arch of her brow, the curve of her cheek. No, it couldn't be, but it was. Something inside him cracked open. He stood still, 20 feet away, watching Mia settle into a seat by the window, completely unaware of the man whose silence had rewritten her life, now staring straight into the face of the consequence. Ryan Blake didn't move at first. He couldn't. His polished shoes were planted on the glossy tile floor of Terminal C, but his mind had already left, racing backward through months of silence, replaying a memory he thought he'd buried for good. Mia, sitting there by the window, holding a child. His child? He swallowed hard. She hadn't seen him yet. Her eyes were on the baby. She leaned down slightly, adjusting the edge of a tiny pink blanket, her touch tender and practiced. She looked older, not in years, but in weight, the kind that came from doing everything alone. His stomach twisted. He remembered their last conversation, if it could even be called that. He had chosen Tokyo over her, over uncertainty, over messiness. He told himself she'd be better off. He convinced himself she'd move on. But now, standing across the terminal, all those justifications shriveled beneath the truth of a little girl curled against Mia's chest, safe, asleep, and possibly his. Ryan's legs moved before his mind gave permission. Each step echoed louder than the last, drowned only by the thunder of blood in his ears. People moved past him, families, couples, travelers, but he saw none of them. His eyes locked on Mia and the child she held like she was everything. He stopped just a few feet away, uncertain. His throat was dry, his hands cold. He spoke her name, soft, hesitant, like saying it might break something. Mia, she looked up, and for a second, just 1 second, the world stopped. Her body tensed, her eyes, wide with disbelief, locked onto his. Time folded in on itself. She didn't run. She didn't speak. She just froze. "Hey," Ryan said quietly, taking a half step closer. "I didn't expect to see you here." Mia's lips parted, but no words came. She blinked once, twice. Then slowly she stood, keeping Luna tucked safely in her arms like a shield. Her voice, when it came, was calm, but firm. "I could say the same to you." Ryan's gaze dropped to Luna. She looked so small, so peaceful. He opened his mouth to speak, but all that came out was a whisper. Is she? Mia didn't answer at first. Instead, she looked down at her daughter. Luna stirred slightly in her sleep, shifting her tiny hand over Mia's chest. The motion was soft, familiar, intimate. It told Ryan everything. His heart lurched. Mia, he tried again, more breath than sound. Is she mine? Mia raised her eyes. There was no anger in them, just the exhaustion of someone who had stopped hoping for apologies a long time ago. And then, with a steady voice, she answered, She's 13 months old, Ryan. That was all she said, and it was all he needed to hear. Ryan staggered back a step. 13 months. Right after Tokyo, right after he walked out and never looked back, his voice cracked, more breath than accusation. Why didn't you tell me? Mia didn't flinch. She just looked at him, tired, steady. Because you made sure I couldn't. Ryan blinked. I tried, she continued quietly but firmly. Your number didn't work anymore. Your email bounced. I reached out to your office. Your assistant told me, Mr. Blake is not available for personal matters. I went there in person, Ryan. Security turned me away at the lobby. She shifted Luna slightly in her arms. The baby let out a soft sigh, but remained asleep. I didn't choose to do this alone, Mia said. You locked the door. I just learned how to survive outside it. Ryan felt like the ground beneath him was moving. He had told himself back then that cutting ties was mercy, that silence would keep them both from more pain. But he hadn't spared her. He had erased himself from an entire lifetime. Mia, he started, but no words followed. Mia's voice dropped lower, closer to breaking, but still controlled. You weren't there when I stared at the ultrasound monitor, wondering what to ask because I didn't even know what I was looking at. You weren't there when I filled out forms with shaking hands, listing your name, and then crossing it out because I didn't know if it mattered anymore. She looked away for a second, steadying herself. You weren't there when I stood in a freezing rainstorm, 8 months pregnant, waiting for a bus to my freelance job. You weren't there when I went into labor and had to sign forms in case anything went wrong, alone. And you weren't there when Luna was born with a mild infection and spent 2 nights in an incubator. I sat next to her crib, watching her breathe under a blue light, not knowing if she was okay, not being able to touch her. Ryan's chest tightened. His hands curled into fists at his sides. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Every word from Mia was a blade, each one justified. She wouldn't sleep that first night home, Mia whispered. I sang lullabies I couldn't finish because I kept crying. I held her through colic, through fevers, through nights when the heat wouldn't work, and I wrapped her in every coat I owned. A tear finally slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. I used to imagine you'd come back, that one day you'd knock on the door and say you were ready. I named her Luna, Ryan, remember? It was the name we once joked about. Luna means light in the dark. That's what she became, my little moon. Ryan could barely breathe. He had been somewhere else. Conferences, deadlines, hotel rooms. He had missed it all, not because she shut him out, but because he walked away. She has your eyes, Mia added softly. People say that all the time. They don't know it cuts me. I just smile, then turn away before I cry. The silence between them swelled with grief, with truth, with 13 months of unspoken things. Ryan knelt down slowly, one hand trembling as he reached toward Luna's tiny hand. I thought I was protecting you, he said, voice raw. From me, from becoming my father, from turning love into something toxic. But I didn't protect you, Mia. I abandoned you. Mia looked at him, not with anger, but something deeper, something that had been hollowed out by months of doing it all alone. I didn't need protection, she said. I needed your presence. Ryan nodded, and for the first time in over a year, he understood what those words truly meant. Silence pressed down on them, heavier than any words either could offer. Ryan remained kneeling on the terminal floor, just a few feet away, his gaze locked on the sleeping child in Mia's arms. His arms ached to hold her, but he didn't move. He had no right. And then, Luna stirred. A soft, breathy noise escaped her lips, the kind babies make somewhere between sleep and waking. Her eyelids fluttered. Mia instinctively shifted her body to comfort her, whispering softly, "Shh, baby, Mama's here." But Luna didn't cry. Instead, she opened her eyes, large, warm, still cloudy with dreams, and turned her gaze toward the man crouched a few feet away. Her eyes fixed on him with a startling calmness, like she had seen him before in a place too deep for memory to explain. And then, she reached. Tiny arms lifted, fingers curled slightly. The motion was slow, searching, but unmistakable. Ryan froze. Mia's breath caught. Luna never did that with strangers. She was shy, careful, slow to warm to anyone new. And yet now, she leaned forward, arms stretched toward Ryan like she already knew who he was. She doesn't usually do that," Mia said quickly, but the tremble in her voice gave away the truth. Even she didn't believe it. Ryan moved cautiously, one step, then another. "Hi," he said softly, crouching again. "Hi, Luna." He didn't expect anything in return, but she made a sound, a tiny babble full of wonder, and kept reaching. Ryan extended his hand, just enough for her fingers to graze his. And in that moment, the world narrowed into a single connection. One hand, one touch, one impossible thread between past and present. Luna gripped his finger, not tightly, not with full strength, just enough. It was instinctual, uncertain, but real. Ryan's heart thundered. A beat skipped, a breath hitched. His other hand lifted hesitantly. "Can I?" he whispered, looking up at Mia. She hesitated, then slowly, painfully slowly, she shifted Luna into his arms. Ryan held her like glass, like something fragile and sacred. Her small body molded into his chest without resistance. Her cheek pressed against his shoulder, her fingers still curled into his jacket. And just like that, she settled. A deep sigh left her lips. That soft, satisfied kind only babies make when they've found something warm and safe. Her entire body relaxed into him. Mia didn't speak. She just stood there, arms empty, watching something she had imagined 100 times in the dark, but never thought she'd witness in daylight. Ryan looked down at Luna, stunned. "She knows me," he whispered. His voice cracked. He looked up at Mia, eyes glistening. "Did you see that?" "She knows me." Mia said nothing, but something in her chest shifted, something she'd kept buried under layers of grief and strength. She had survived without him, but in this moment, Luna chose. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. For a long moment, none of them moved. Luna, barely more than 13 months old, slept soundly in Ryan's arms, her head tucked under his chin, her fingers still gripping the lapel of his coat like they'd belonged there all along. He didn't dare shift. He didn't speak. He simply held her, memorizing the weight of her, the softness, the trust. Mia stood across from him, her eyes no longer cold but not yet soft. She watched his every motion, the way he supported Luna's head, the slight tremble in his hands, how his entire posture bent to protect this tiny life. The overhead speaker cracked through the silence. "Final boarding for flight 724 to Lisbon. Gate C22 is now closing." Mia's eyes flicked toward the gate, then to her boarding pass, then back to Ryan. Ryan looked up. His voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Please don't go." Mia's expression flickered. She had planned this departure for nearly a year. Every detail, a job, an apartment, a new school for Luna, a future, a clean break. "You can't just show up like this and expect everything to change," she said, her voice tight but steady. "I know," Ryan replied quickly, "and I'm not asking for forgiveness. Not yet." He looked down at the baby sleeping against him. "But if you walk away now, I lose the only chance I'll ever have to be her father." Mia clenched the boarding pass in her hand. Her chest rose and fell with the weight of every memory, every sleepless night, every moment she had survived without him. "So what are you asking me to do?" she asked, her voice barely holding. "Throw away everything I've worked for just because you finally realize what matters?" "No," Ryan said gently. "I'm not asking you to give anything up." He paused, his gaze steady. "I'm asking for 2 weeks." Mia stared at him, unmoving. "I'll earn every second," he said. "I won't fix this with words or promises. But if you let me, I'll show up every day. Not for you, for her." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything unspoken: regret, fear, hope. Finally, Mia dropped her bag beside her and sank slowly into the chair next to him. She looked at Luna, then at Ryan. 2 weeks, she said softly. "That's all, Ryan. No more." He nodded, clutching Luna just a little tighter. Mia didn't look at him when she added, "You'll have to prove it every single day." The Airbnb in Brooklyn was small, just 2 bedrooms, 1 shared bathroom, and a creaky floor that betrayed every late-night step. But to Ryan, it felt like stepping into a different world. No ringing phones, no hotel lobbies, no slide decks or polished presentations, just a baby who woke up screaming at 3 a.m. and a woman who watched every move he made with quiet skepticism. The first night, Luna refused to sleep. She fussed, kicked, whimpered. Mia moved with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Ryan hovered awkwardly in the hallway, unsure whether to step in or stay out of the way. Finally, he asked, "Can I try?" Mia raised an eyebrow, then without a word handed Luna to him. The moment she left his arms, Luna screamed louder, thrashing, red-faced. Ryan panicked, bouncing her gently, then faster, then too fast. Okay," he muttered, heart racing. "No bouncing, got it." Mia watched from the doorway, arms folded. Ryan tried pacing instead. "Shh, you're okay, little moon. Daddy's here." She cried harder. He rocked her side to side, hummed something off-key, held her tighter, and then suddenly, miraculously, she stopped. Her cheek pressed into his shoulder, her sobs faded into hiccups, and her tiny hand curled around his shirt. Ryan exhaled. His shirt was soaked, his back ached, but he was still holding her, and she wasn't crying anymore. He didn't realize Mia was still standing there, watching. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Over the next few days, the chaos became routine. Ryan learned how to warm a bottle just right, not too hot, or Luna would spit it back at him with a glare that clearly said, "Rookie." He changed his first diaper like it was a live grenade. Mia laughed so hard she cried when he ended up with baby wipes on his elbow and a very smug Luna on the changing pad. "You're officially in the club now," she said, handing him a clean shirt. He learned how to burp her after every meal, how to interpret the difference between her hungry cry and her "I just want you" cry. He even discovered that Luna loved books, not the story, but the sound of his voice. One evening after dinner, Mia handed him a worn copy of a children's book about a lost fox in the woods. "She likes this one." Ryan sat on the floor, Luna cradled in one arm, the book trembling slightly in the other. His voice wavered at first, but as he read aloud, slow, unsure, Luna watched him. Not the pictures, him. She didn't understand the words, but her eyes said everything. "You're trying. That's enough." The nights were the hardest. One night Luna cried for 3 hours straight. "Teething," Mia said. Ryan held her, rocked her, whispered lullabies he didn't know he remembered. He felt useless, but every time he whispered, "Daddy's here." Her cries softened, and slowly something began to change. Not just in Luna, but in him. He no longer reached for his phone every 10 minutes. He no longer woke with the urge to check emails before the sun rose. He started measuring time not in meetings, but in naps, feedings, diaper counts, and bedtime stories. Some moments were beautiful, others were ugly. Ryan didn't know what he was doing most of the time, but he kept showing up, and Mia noticed. One quiet afternoon, the three of them lay on the carpet. Luna crawled between them, holding a squeaky lion toy, babbling nonsense and smiling like the sun had set just for her. Mia looked at Ryan, really looked, and for the first time, she saw not a man trying to act like a father, but a man who had become one. At night, when the apartment fell quiet and Luna was finally asleep, Mia would often find herself sitting by the living room window, watching the blurred city lights shimmer against the glass. It was in these moments between the chaos of the day and the stillness of night that her fears returned. What happens when this ends? What if one day Ryan's phone rings with a bigger opportunity, a conference, a job offer, a continent away? She had trusted him once, and he had left. Not with cruelty, but with silence. And silence, she'd learned, could hurt deeper than words. One night she sat curled on the couch, a blanket draped over her knees. Ryan came out from the nursery rubbing his eyes. "She's out," he whispered. "She's exhausted," Mia replied. "So are you." Ryan sat beside her, leaving space in between. He didn't try to close it. He just sat. For a while, neither of them spoke. The hum of the fridge, the muffled sound of traffic outside, the ticking clock. These were the only sounds. Finally, Ryan said softly, "I know you still don't trust me." Mia turned to him slowly. Her voice was low. "Would you, if you were me?" He nodded. "No, I wouldn't." She looked down at her hands. "You said all the right things before, Ryan. You said you weren't ready, and then you disappeared. You made the decision for both of us." "I was scared," he admitted, "of failing, of turning into my father, of messing up something good. I thought if I stayed away, I couldn't hurt anyone." "But you did," Mia said, not cruelly, not angrily, just honestly. Ryan lowered his eyes. "And now," he added, voice cracking, "every time Luna reaches for me, every time she calls me Papa, I realize how much I missed and how much I almost lost." Mia didn't speak for a long time. The quiet stretched between them like a fragile thread. Then she said gently, "I don't need you to be perfect, Ryan. I just need to know you won't disappear again." He met her gaze, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "I can't promise the future," he whispered, "but I can promise this. When you wake up tomorrow, I'll still be here, and the morning after, and the one after that." There were no grand declarations, no apologies rehearsed, just truth, raw, imperfect, and real. And for the first time since seeing him again, Mia let herself believe, not for his sake, but for Luna's. Saturday morning came with rare Brooklyn sunshine, golden light pouring through the windows, warming the hardwood floors of the tiny apartment. Mia suggested they take Luna out for a walk. Nothing big, just the local farmer's market 2 blocks down. A little fresh air, a little normalcy. Ryan agreed immediately. Luna rode in a yellow stroller Mia had borrowed from a neighbor. She wore a cream-colored beanie and clutched her favorite stuffed elephant like a treasure. Every time the stroller bumped over a crack in the sidewalk, she squealed with laughter, as if the whole world had decided to play with her. Ryan pushed the stroller with one hand, holding a cup of coffee in the other, the one Mia had bought for him, just the way he liked it now. No one spoke much. They didn't need to. Mia walked beside him, watching quietly as he leaned down to talk to Luna every few steps. "See that dog? He's got more hair than Papa. Look, Luna, blueberries, your favorite." Okay, yes, you win. We're getting the apples. At the fruit stand, Luna pointed excitedly. Papa, she called out. Apple. Ryan blinked, surprised. You want apples, little one? She stretched out her arms with pure toddler joy, and Ryan laughed. Really laughed. The kind that starts in the chest and softens the edges of the face. Mia couldn't help but smile. They filled a canvas bag with fruit, vegetables, a loaf of crusty bread, and a jar of honey from an old woman on the corner. On the way home, Luna fell asleep in the stroller, still holding tightly to her elephant. Ryan draped his jacket over her like a blanket. Mia looked at him, something softer flickering in her eyes. You just did something really ordinary, she said. Ryan glanced at her and smiled. It doesn't feel ordinary to me. I know. They didn't hold hands. They didn't kiss. But something passed between them anyway. Quiet, real, and unspoken. And in that sunlight, with Luna's hair catching gold through the beanie, and Ryan's hand resting lightly on Mia's shoulder, it felt like the start of something they didn't have to rush. Not perfect, not fixed, but something that looked, and for a brief moment, felt like family. The final Sunday of their 2 weeks arrived wrapped in quiet. Outside, the wind whispered through early autumn leaves. Inside, Mia sat alone on a park bench across from the Airbnb, her phone resting heavy in her palm. An email reminder glowed on the screen. Lisbon Creatives, please confirm your relocation by Monday morning. Everything was ready. The job, the apartment, the daycare Luna had been accepted into, a clean slate she had spent nearly a year building on paper. And yet, she hadn't booked a return flight. Ryan sat down beside her, careful not to disturb the quiet that surrounded her like a fragile shell. Luna was asleep in the stroller next to them, her cheeks rosy from the chill, a moon-printed blanket tucked under her chin. I know today's the deadline, Ryan said softly, watching Luna. I'm not here to pressure you. I can't pretend this doesn't matter. Mia said nothing for a while. I planned Lisbon down to the hour, she murmured. A new life, far from here, far from you, far from all the noise. She turned the phone face down on her lap. I had it all figured out. And then, you showed up. Ryan nodded. You've done everything on your own, Mia. I can't take that away from you. I don't want to, but if there's even the smallest chance that Luna could grow up with both her parents, even if we're messy, even if we're figuring it out day by day, would you consider staying? Mia looked straight ahead. Her voice was quieter now. You didn't run when she had a fever. You woke up every night she cried. You read her the same book 4 times in a row and never complained. She paused. I was watching to see if you'd break or disappear again, and you didn't. Ryan's shoulders dropped slightly, something like hope returning to his posture. But I'm still scared, Mia admitted. Scared that one day work will come calling and I'll wake up alone again. Scared Luna will ask me where you went. I can't promise I'll be perfect, Ryan said, but I can promise I won't disappear. Not when it's hard, not when it's inconvenient, not when you need me, or when Luna needs me. Mia looked down at her daughter. Soft hair, steady breathing, tiny fingers curled into the blanket. Luna didn't know that today, her mother would make a decision that could rewrite all of their futures. I could stay in New York, Mia whispered, not because I've forgiven you, but because Luna deserves a father. And maybe you deserve a chance to become one. Ryan didn't move. He didn't speak. He just reached out, gently, quietly, and covered her hand with his. Thank you, he said, barely audible. And for the first time, Mia didn't pull away. Autumn in Brooklyn came slowly, wrapping the city in golden leaves and smoky air. The wind carried the scent of roasted chestnuts from street corners, and the trees along the sidewalks blushed quietly into reds and ochres. Inside a small third-floor apartment, the season felt warmer. In the kitchen, Mia stood barefoot on cool tiles, stirring a pot of butternut squash soup. The window above the sink was open just a crack, letting in crisp air and the sound of laughter from the street below. Behind her, Luna ran in delighted circles, clutching her one-eared teddy bear and squealing with every wobble. Crayons were scattered on the floor, pages taped to the fridge. Sunshines, stick figures, crooked hearts drawn in the unsteady joy of a toddler's hand. The front door creaked open. Ryan stepped in, windblown and smiling, holding a brown paper bag full of apples, pears, and fresh figs from the corner market. His cheeks were pink from the cold. His sleeves were rolled up. And the moment he stepped into the kitchen and saw them, his family, his expression softened. "Delivery from the orchard of Fifth Avenue," he grinned, setting the bag on the counter. Luna screamed with joy. "Papa!" He scooped her up and kissed her cheek as she giggled, her tiny arms wrapped around his neck like it was the only place she ever wanted to be. Later that afternoon, they all sat on the rug in the living room, markers in hand, knees touching, Luna tucked between them. Mia drew a house with a garden. Ryan added stars to the sky. Luna scribbled in purple, declaring it was a dinosaur. No one corrected her. Ryan watched her tiny hand move across the paper, and for a fleeting second, he felt the world slow, like this was what he had been missing all along. When dusk fell, they bathed her, brushed her curls, and tucked her into bed. Ryan read the bedtime story, slowly with all the voices. Luna listened wide-eyed, yawning halfway through the last page before falling asleep with her teddy bear clutched to her chest. Mia watched from the doorway, noticing how his voice softened, how naturally he held their daughter now, how different this man was from the one who once walked away. When Ryan joined her later on the small balcony, the air had grown cooler. They stood side by side, the city glittering quietly around them. Mia took a deep breath, her eyes steady. "I didn't stay for you," she said softly. "I stayed because I didn't want to leave anymore." Ryan didn't say anything at first. He simply reached for her hand, fingers finding hers in the dark, warm and certain. Then with a quiet smile, he replied, "We're not starting over, Mia. We're finally starting where we should have been all along." And together in the soft glow of an ordinary evening, they stood there, two people who had been broken in all the hardest ways, now choosing every single day to stay.